Hi, my name's Bob Cameron, and I've spent decades working around the world on sustainable technologies. Most recently, I'm at Penn State University, where I conduct research with living walls, green roofs, and constructed wetlands. In addition, I have a small consulting firm called Applied Technologies, where I design and build these similar technologies. Recently, I had the opportunity to teach about these sustainable technologies at a university in China. My travels for that trip took me literally around the world. And I've put together a brief PowerPoint to describe some of the living walls and green roofs that I observed along the way. Hope you enjoy it. Throughout the world, the built environment is changing dramatically with the integration of biofilters such as living roofs and living walls. This presentation discusses a few of the many such applications I observed during a 4-month sojourn around the globe. My journey was initiated by a request to teach the science behind green roofs, living walls, and constructed wetlands to the Department of Environmental Engineering at Qingdao Agricultural University in China. The opportunity to teach Chinese students about sustainable technologies was at once very exciting, but also very daunting. For nearly 2 months, at times 7 days a week, I presented 3-hour-long lectures for 2 environmental engineering courses, one to undergraduates and other to graduate students. The lectures covered related topics such as life cycle analysis, species diversity, pollutant attenuation, and culminated in presentations regarding biofilters such as living walls, green roofs, constructed wetlands. The final class project was the construction of a small living wall in one of the class buildings. Bringing that wall to fruition underscored the many challenges faced by contractors of these technologies in developing markets. Plant nurseries, where they exist, tend not to have the species needed for living walls and roofs. Now, this is rapidly changing, and there are major nurseries expanding operations throughout China to provide the proper species of plants. Ed Snodgrass, owner of Emery Knoll Farms, is involved in a number of joint ventures with Chinese growers to address this issue. I anticipated some difficulties in acquiring plants and materials for living walls, but I was somewhat blindsided by building ownership. In China, ownership of a property can be very complex. At a university, buildings are owned and operated by the government with very little oversight from the university. Therefore, approval to install a living wall inside a classroom building can be extremely difficult to obtain, as I quickly found out as weeks passed and my selected sites were all denied. In the end, I was provided an area, much less than optimal for a living wall, down a long corridor in a dimly lit area, but we were able to get the various materials and construct a living wall. But despite these challenges, the response from the students underscored that this generation is not only interested in the environment, they intend to do something positive to address current issues. And as I face various roadblocks to make this small project a reality, the students stepped up and they made it happen. So it speaks volumes for, I think, the future of these types of technologies and environmental issues as a whole in China. Well, Qingdao Agricultural University was the destination, but I've always believed that the journey should be just as interesting. Since the early 1990s, I've traveled to China over a half dozen times. And in the past, I've always traveled west from the US to go to China. So this time I decided to take an alternative route and go to China by going east. So I began my 4-month journey by traveling across the Atlantic Ocean to the Netherlands, Belgium, on to India, then to China, Mongolia, South Korea, and finally returning back to the USA via Hawaii. I traveled around each of these countries seeking out living walls, living roofs, and other applications of sustainable technologies. I especially crisscrossed China, actually using a wide range of transportation modes, including common ones such as the train, airplane, automobile, bus, boat, bicycle, and then some less conventional such as bamboo rafts, horse, tuk-tuk, water buffalo, and of course, lots of foot. From Inner Mongolia to Tibet, Shanghai to Shenyang, I explored 15 of China's 34 provincial level administration units. Although the rapidly expanding economies of both India and China are responsible for major contamination of the air, water, and soil, there are numerous examples of efforts to promote green space. Now, due to space constraints here, I'm going to focus on just 4 examples of what I observed. Living walls in Delhi, India, an expansive agro production on a green roof outside of Shanghai, living walls in Kunming, and living wall green roof in Seoul, Korea. So when traveling across the Atlantic, if you're doing so in early spring, beginning of May, late April, as I was doing, you have to stop in the Netherlands. The Netherlands, the most densely populated country on earth, have fully embraced sustainable technologies. But I had to stop there for the spring blooms, and certainly unparalleled for any place on earth for the number of blooms. So, highly recommend it. From Northern Europe, I traveled on to Northern India, where I focused on the Golden Triangle of Delhi, Jaipur, and Agra. Delhi is one of the most populated cities in the world, and as such belongs to that growing class of cities called megacities, those with at least 10 million inhabitants. The bulk of the megacities of the world are located in Asia, and especially India and China. India currently is the second most populous country in the world, and projections show that India may actually surpass China in a few decades. The megacities create a major impact to the environment, of course, and the Indian government has implemented initiatives to reduce pollution levels. Delhi actually has the 3rd highest number of trees compared with other Indian cities. Yet, despite these efforts to curb pollution, Delhi has been ranked as one of the most polluted cities on earth. On a positive note, efforts to improve the environmental quality of these cities is not limited to respective governments, as individuals try to do their part to improve conditions. And one such individual is a gentleman I caught up with Mr. Iqbal Maan. The Golden Triangle is the home of the Taj Mahal, as well as the Pink Palace of Jaipur, and like so much of India, is a constant contradiction of exotic past blended with a pursuit of the modern future. Mr. Iqbal Maan, the owner of Green Agro Limited, is contributing to the greening of Delhi by constructing living walls and green roofs. In 2009, he expanded his business of supplying and maintaining potted plants for primarily commercial interiors to include greening interior and exterior facades. His first project was at the Delhi International Airport, where he constructed a living wall at Gate 7 using the Singapore system of elements. This comprises vertical modules assembled from high-strength, lightweight structural panels, incorporating interlocking snap-on clips. For irrigation, he used potable water as a supply, very common throughout Asia. Incorporating 10 different species of interior plants, including Chlorophytum comosum, also known as a spider plant, Dracaena species, Tradescantia species, Dieffenbachia. These are very similar to what you find throughout the world now. Since his first application, Mr. Maan has constructed numerous living walls, both interior and exterior, throughout Delhi for a wide range of clients. Sematic, a provider of high-end kitchen. This slide depicts some of the plant species utilized by Mr. Maan on a specific interior living wall. The observer will probably recognize many of these species as commonly used in his particular region, wherever that may be in the world. These species are adept at being grown on vertical wall surfaces, and so, not surprisingly, they are being replicated throughout the world. I asked Mr. Maan to provide an overview of the various issues which impact construction of living walls in India. And for those of you in the industry, these will come as no surprise to you. In particular, I would like to underscore those issues pertaining to maintenance. There is a perception among clients that these types of systems are natural and therefore require no maintenance. And again, as any of you know, they require, in some cases, intensive maintenance. As Mr. Maan explained, for the airport walls, the client wanted a lifetime guarantee but refused to pay for any type of annual maintenance. And as some of the slides depict here in the bottom right, there is severe dieback from some of these areas, again, due to the lack of maintenance. So this is a universal issue, certainly not unique to India. From northern India, I crossed the Himalayas into China, the most populous country in the world. China continues to confront the many issues resulting from a population of about 1.4 billion people, a rapidly expanding consumer society, and a fast-developing economy. Due to a concerted effort by the Chinese government, the urban population now accounts for 53% of the population. alarming pollution levels in the megacities of Shanghai and especially Beijing are internationally renowned. But improvements in the environmental condition has become one of the main goals of the new Chinese government. China, like India, has tremendous diversity. And again, that clash of the ancient traditions with the ultra-modern. And often these are seen side by side as you travel across China. China also has diverse ecosystems, ranging from karst topography to the ceiling of the world at Mount Everest in the Himalayas. And of course, as mentioned, the increasing number of megacities. Some Chinese are taking the initiative to do their part to improve the environment. Outside of Shanghai, on the way to Hangzhou, Mr. Chen, the owner of a textile plant, wanted to provide uncontaminated fruits and vegetables in his cafeteria for his employees. So he took the nearly 3 acres of rooftops associated with the 3 manufacturing buildings, connected them with bridges, and accessed them with a glass elevator. He then imported tons of soil from Scandinavia to place on the top of these 3 buildings in the effort to create gardens to provide fresh produce for his employees' cafeteria. The result is stunning. He now has a diverse array of agricultural products, from tomatoes to melons, even grapevines, producing ample fruit and vegetables for his employees. He does this in primarily using containers with minimal amount of living walls. The extensive gardens were constructed utilizing feng shui, which incorporates both water and mountain features on the rooftop. All of the irrigation water is from collected stormwater. Therein lies a problem. Being on the outside of Shanghai, a major industrial center, the rain, of course, will wash pollutants from the air, as well as just solid deposition of particles will fall on the roof. This would actually have been a very interesting academic study to see what the long-term impacts were to the soils imported from Norway. The stormwater collection system actually could utilize living walls, small constructed wetlands as biofilters if it were deemed that the pollutants precipitating on the roof pose a significant impact to the quality of the produce. An executive chef has developed very creative uses for the many vegetables and fruits produced on the rooftop. Traveling to Shanghai, to one of the main tourist features of the city, the Bund, there is what's referred to as the flower wall. It's an incredible living wall that extends over 100 feet along the elevated walkway that parallels the river. When I asked visitors why they thought the wall was constructed, the overwhelming response was, because it's beautiful. And that is part of the Chinese philosophy that architecture should, by its design, be beautiful. The designers in this case used a grid system, very common in China, which allows planted pots to be inserted. So these walls can require extreme amounts of maintenance to preserve the aesthetics. And consequently, pots can be very easily removed and new plants inserted. Of course, it requires extensive irrigation, and each pot requiring a microcapillary tube to provide adequate moisture. This becomes an Achilles heel, with plugging of these tubes very common, and subsequent die-off of the plant. But the results of these efforts are stunning, and this is an extremely popular spot for photos of the frequent visitors to the Bund. Kunming is a city in southwest China, which is also known as Spring City because of its beautiful year-round temperature. Again, the city planners and designers believe that a premise of their design should be harmonious and livable. And so on every turn, a visitor will find suddenly a large use of flower walls, as depicted with these flower towers in a central park. This compilation of living wall pictures from throughout the cities of Xining and Kunming show a variety of applications, from systems using trays on an entrance, underground entrance to a mall, to the simulation of the Great Wall of China at a traffic circle. Some of these look like topiaries, but again, it's using the common Chinese system of a grid with pots inserted. And again, these systems are ubiquitous. You'll also notice on the left a parking garage, both along highways as well as on parking garage. The Chinese are designing systems of wall planners that allow the facades to be covered in green. There are mega projects, as you would expect. So for instance, at Beijing's International Airport, the design of the airport was to symbolize a dragon. And covering the parking area, along with auxiliary areas, is an extensive green roof. In China, as with most of the world, airports seem to be a favorite venue for the integration of living walls. Here shown is one of the gates at the Kunming airport, where they've utilized living walls to create somewhat of a private space, a workspace, at a main international gate. Again, this was constructed using a tray system. As with many of these systems, there seems to be some lack of maintenance, as if you look, you'll find areas void of plants. But again, overall, it provides a very attractive facade for passengers, and they've also integrated some artistic sculptures into the decor. Now on to South Korea. Seoul, another of Asia's megacities, has a transitional climate. It's subtropical during the warmer months, with some elements of a tropical wet-dry system, while from November to May, it's more continental with cold to freezing temperatures and much drier conditions. So it certainly poses problems for exterior living walls. My destination was the Walker Hill Sheraton Hotel, which is located in northeastern Seoul and overlooks the Han River. The hotel's website touts its many sustainable practices, but I was there for the living wall and green roof, which unfortunately is mentioned nowhere on its site. The approximately 100-foot long interior wall depicted on the previous slide was lush and green. Not so with the exterior living wall on the parking garage depicted on the top of this slide. There's nearly 100% die-off of the planted species. In their place, moss and an occasional weed species have filled the void. Without additional details, it's really not possible to fully understand the cause of this failure. The moss indicates that moisture is present, at least now, but may also hint at a problem with the media properties, including available nutrients and pH. Orientation of the facade to the sun may also have played a key role in the demise of the particular plant species that were used. Complete failures such as these are disturbing on many levels. It promotes an adverse attitude of green wall technology and greatly overshadowed the many successful applications. This wall's failure and the resulting issues may well be why it was not possible to obtain any details about the living walls or green roofs from hotel staff or the website. It's a pity, since an understanding of what causes such failures can help us to prevent these types of problems with future systems. Now, the extensive green roof on the garage and the associated intensive gardens on subsequent decks had much better growth with a wide variety of plant species. However, some areas were overgrown with invasive weeds. Again, this might be due to a lack of maintenance or a deficiency in the initial design or construction. The designers did integrate an educational component by including nice placards denoting plant species, along with the ability to access more information with a QR reader. The integration of the green roof and living wall in the garage design, along with the extensive gardens, make for a really interesting use of these technologies. During the summer, Seoul receives a high amount of rainfall, and this design could readily be adapted to control runoff from the garage. However, it appeared that all of these systems were again irrigated with potable water. As I mentioned previously, one of the main problems we have throughout the world is the available palette of plants for exterior and also interior living walls. And so as I traveled around Asia, I made a point to go to some less visited areas, more remote areas, to look for the potential for plant species that might be adapted to these uses. There's a number of places where I found plants that I think have a great potential, and I'm in communication now with university botany departments to be able to collect plants and hopefully bring them to the nursery industry. Potential areas include the karst topography of southwest China, limestone formations, also occurring in Guilin. Tibet has some interesting alpine areas, and also the Gobi Desert. In eastern China, as I hiked a holy mountain, I found colonies of what appeared to be a sempervivum with an interesting curly leaf morphology. This could be a very interesting plant for use on green roofs as well as living walls. The Gobi Desert, located in southern Mongolia, is renowned for its lack of moisture and sparsity of vegetation. But every so often, when you trek across this desolate area, you'll come across an oasis made possible by an upwelling of water. I stumbled across one of these oases in the Gobi and was just amazed by the diversity of plant species contained in a very small area. There I found birch trees, fern species, numerous types of sedums, and rhubarb growing everywhere. There was a profusion of flowers. Many of these species may have the potential for applications to green roofs and living walls. But it underscored the importance of water. Here in the most hostile of environments, you add water and it created a rich ecosystem. And again, as I've tried to depict in the various slides, regardless of where you're at in the world, artificial systems such as living walls and green roofs require water to be successful. Well, I hope you enjoyed this PowerPoint. Now I'm off to do some of my latest research. I'm constructing an aquaponics integrated with a living wall in my kitchen to provide herbs for my cooking, and also working on floating island technologies for the attenuation of nutrients. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye now.